All right, it is time for me to be a Grinch, and I shall be a Grinch. We're going to talk about DNFs and disappointments and my worst books. I have 7 DNFs and 7 total disappointments and worst books. So that's not too bad. I think I read 90 some books this year, so for 14 of them to be on this list isn't horrible. I have my surprises video that's already up in my end of the year contact, which has my runner-ups for my best of. Best of is on the horizon. It's getting there. It's a good list. It's a good list. I know more of you will click on this because that is the human experience. But just know the best of is a great list. This is a sad list. So let's get into it, starting with the DNFs. I actually kept track of those this year, and 7 DNFs, she is growing. Growth. The first one is honestly a disappointment and a DNF. I really wanted to love this trilogy and be like, this is my hidden gem. You guys should all read it. And this is War Child by Karen Lowalchi, who I love their short stories. And this probably won't be the last time I try something by this author because I really do love this book in some ways, but I just couldn't keep going. So the first part is in second person, and it's really traumatic and really tense and really good military sci-fi. It's just that the second part kind of takes its foot off the gas. And instead of focusing on this relationship that I thought would be really interesting, and it's more platonic, it's not like a romantic relationship, it forces our main character who's already traumatized into isolation, and then it teases back to community, but then it goes right back to isolation. And it's I just didn't want to keep following this character be in isolation. So if that doesn't bother you, I actually think it's a really compelling world building, really great themes on occupation and war and fighting and who gets caught in the crosshairs. It just, wasn't for me. I much prefer, I think, her shorter works. But I thought I was going to love this because the first part that was in second person was so strong for me. I devoured that within 30 minutes. In a pretty stressful period of my life, I was reading it on our move to Ohio. So, but I was bummed. I was bummed about that. Next up, less bummed about, not surprised about, the Terraformers. I read a bunch of books for the Nebula shortlist, and I DNF'd liberally. This was one of them. I read 50% of this. I don't know, I read a fair bit. I read for sure at least the first part, because it's generational science fiction, that are interconnected. It's you have, I think, a character that pulls through, and you'll probably see the big picture, and blah, blah, blah. But for me, the first part was fine, really okay. And then the second part was boring me, and I just didn't have it in me to keep going. Especially because I like generational sci-fi, but I like it to be tight. I like it to be compelling. I wasn't really vibing with the themes here or the character work. I know I harp on a lot of generational sci-fi for not being symbiosis, but symbiosis is really good. So that's the bar. If you don't engage me like symbiosis did and you're longer, you gotta explain it to me, and it just didn't work for me, alas. It was fine though. I wouldn't steer anyone away from it, other than to say symbiosis was better for me, so maybe it would be better for you, who is to say. But yeah, so that was not a really surprising DNF, and I was just so proud of myself because I was falling into the trap of, well, if I put the audio on 3 times speed and immersion read, I can be done in 2 hours. But then I was but you could do something else for 2 hours. And then I did. So again, growth. Who is she? The next one was similar. Water Outlaws. I read this for the same project. It was familiar. It was very familiar to me, but not in a way that made me feel nostalgic or cozy. Gosh, what do I even remember about this? I was losing my memory of these things in the time. I think it's Chinese inspired, but I'm not sure if it's in China. I can't even remember that. It's definitely gender bent something, so we have a lot of female main characters we're following. There's different types of the caricatures of the different types of female characters. There's going to be drama. This is what I remember. I put it down because I'm there's going to be infighting. I don't want to deal with infighting right now. And so I put it down. And I didn't actually understand the purpose of what we were doing. I think there was supposed to be some intrigue about something's coming on the horizon, probably from the north. It's always from the north. Really, we should study that culturally. It's always from the north, truly. So yeah, I don't think it was bad, but again, it wasn't capturing my attention. And so I think I read 30% of this before I put it down. The next one is a soft DNF, and that's Radiance by Grace Draven. I still need to try Grace Draven and give her a solid shot, I am picking you up intentionally. Because I know when I picked this up, I was more just I think I'm in the mood for this. And I read a little bit, like probably a chapter or two, not nearly as much as the other DNFs I've just talked about. And I was just like, this is so cozy. There is no angst. And maybe I'm a bad person, but I was raised in the early aughts. I would love my romance to have angst. I don't know why. I'm currently rewatching Bridgerton season 2. I love slow burn, pining angst. They are just so cordial. They are so friendly with each other. And I don't know, it wasn't doing it for me. Maybe one day it would do it for me. Unsure. So for now, it's a soft DNF. The next one is a for sure DNF. This is The Familiar. Is it called The Familiar? It's not Familiars. I'm pretty sure it's The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo. And I was really bummed about this. I was disappointed. I've only read 2 Leigh Bardugo, but I've really liked both of them. I read Ninth House and Hellbent, and I really liked how engaging and pulpy and campy they were. So for this, I was just hoping for another engaging time, nothing deep. It was historical fantasy, which can work for me. It was in Spain. I don't know, I was ready to be swept away in a story. I don't even care about her unlikable characters. But my big issue here was that the characters' actions did not match her brain. And that's a dissonance that I just can't vibe with. Pair that with a plot that I just didn't find interesting, and I was just like, I think 30% of the way in, I just noped out. And like a bunch of people, we were buddy reading this for my Patreon, like only a few people finished it, and most of them just gave it 3 to 3.5 stars, and we all have like kind of similar tastes. And no one said anything that made me feel like, okay, maybe I should push through. I was just bummed because, again, I've been having good luck with this author's adult fantasy, and typically in a way where this is going to be an engaging time. This will be a good audiobook for me to listen to on my way to work, and it'll make my commute less boring, and instead it made it more boring, and isn't that awful? So yeah, I had character dissonance, and I just truly did not care about the story. Maybe I should have. There was like Spanish Inquisition, people are definitely being wronged, but I just didn't care. So I DNF'd it. And then there's 2 more DNFs. All right. August Kito and the Mechos from Space. Big disappointment. Really wanted to love this. I read the first 80 pages, which is about a quarter of the book, in one sitting for like a reading sprint. And I was feeling like, yeah, maybe I can get into this. I was a little confused about what's going on. The music sci-fi blend wasn't quite what I wanted it to be, which is the primary reason I picked it up. But, you're at the end of the world and suddenly a mech shows up and they're changing sides and there's this blending of this human and this mech, and I picked it up for that because I'm like always looking for my Pacific Rim fix. Wasn't really going to scratch that Pacific Rim itch, I could tell 80 pages in. And then there are 2 point of views, and they're both kind of obnoxious, and not in like a fun way. And then I read those first 80 pages with every intention of continuing, and then I just couldn't get myself to pick it up. And it wasn't me. It was a stressful time in my life when I was reading this, but then I picked up a different book that was on my surprises video, and I just blazed through it. So, I was capable of reading if the book engaged me. This book did just not engage me. So, it, is what it is. So that disappointed me. And in this last one, I'm not disappointed. I wouldn't have picked this book out for myself. I just can't be bothered to finish it. I have just too many things that I'm loving reading, that to read something this bad, even though it's like so bad it's good quality, I just couldn't. And that's Every Which Way. It's a contemporary romance. This book's bonkers. I think I'm like 25% of the way through. This woman has the mommiest of mommy issues. To the point where the opening scene is her going out to dinner at Olive Garden with her mom to tell her mom, I'm going to start using dating apps. And her big goal in life is to prove to her mom that she can be a career woman and find love, because her mom didn't really believe in that. She's obsessed with Pride and Prejudice because it's her mom's favorite movie. And she's just a Jane Austen girly, She has all the collections of Jane Austen on her bookshelf. So big character development moment, right? She's a Jane Austen girly. And one day she is compelled to shake this nail polish, which, if you've ever held nail polish, you don't have to be compelled to shake it. You just shake it. This is what you do with nail polish. You just shake it. You don't even have to be using it. You're just like, yeah, let's just shake it. It has that little ball in there. If you're someone who's never held nail polish for whatever reason, there's a little ball in it, and it's really fun to shake because it goes cling, 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 cling. It's a normal thing to do if you like tactile experiences. But the book makes a big deal out of it because if she shakes it, a genie comes out. It's not a genie, but a dude who's going to grant her 3 wishes. He's the best part of the book, but he's not good enough to keep me going. And he's obviously the love interest. And then she's all like, I can't just make a wish. I can't just decide to do it. And then, of course, she just gets wine drunk with her roommate and then wishes for a modern Mr. Darcy, which is going about as well as you can expect. This book is bonkers. Again, it's just so bad. It's good, but not quite so bad. It's good enough for me to read it while I'm reading things that, like, I legit love right now. So this is more of probably a pause DNF, maybe. I probably would have finished it if I could get the audiobook, but I'm not paying for the audiobook, and none of my libraries have the audiobook. So I'd have to use my eyeball reading time, and that is reserved for books that I'm loving right now. So it is what it is. Okay, into the disappointments. Now, T. Kingfisher has made it on every one of my lists this year. She's on surprises, she's going to be on best of, and she did, alas, make disappointments. This is not a dislike. This is a disappointment. This is Wonder Engine. This is the second book in the Clockwork Boys. I do really like the first book. I think the first book is great. I really like its pacing. I even like where it ends, okay? I'm not one of those people who's like, this should have just been one book and edited or whatever. Like, I don't know. I think Wonder Engine, the character pacing is just too unequal. And our characters do things that annoy me. Like that I feel are maybe slightly out of character, but are doing it for the sake of the third act breakup-ish of it all. Which I have learned is something in the world of the White Rat that T. Kingfisher has done in some of her fantasy romances that isn't quite to my taste. And it's not because I don't like a third act angsty moment. It's because I just want it to make sense for the characters in terms of how you've written them to me. I don't want them to suddenly be acting dumber than they are. And I felt like that was kind of happening here. I thought all the cool world building was in the first half of the duology and not so much the second. And it just kind of dragged for me. So I was just disappointed because the first one was so strong. And I love So Much by T. Kingfisher, and this was like only a 3.5 star. So it was it was just an internal disappointment. Next up, because this is kind of in order of like least disappointing to like, oh my god, this book, why does it exist? Next up is The Siege of Burning Grass by Rami Mohammed. I read their Nebula-winning novella, love it. Mixed success with their short stories, and this novel was on the Ursula K. Le Guin Award in Fiction, so I read it for that. And it's just too long. And I just didn't like the main character. And thematically, I wasn't that compelled with it. But the big thing that made me disappointed was the ending. And it's partially because it's a stupid cool world. This is such a cool world that I don't get to revel in its coolness because the coolness of the world is more of a backdrop for the thematic work, so you don't really get to delve into it. But then when it comes crashing down is the ending resolution only makes sense if you know about the world, which I don't. So I do not believe the ending is possible. And I am jaded, this is like a rebellion war story, and like what it does well is the bleakness of the end of total war comes across crystal clear. But extrapolating that into how we resolve this, I'm a hard sell most of the time. I am jaded. I don't believe people are good. I don't believe people in power will do the right things for those underneath them unless there is huge payoff. And that's not what happened here. Therefore, I think it's a suspect ending. Granted, it's good to imagine different worlds. It's good to try and imagine scenarios that are different from our own. Not everything has to be realistic. But that is one of always my gripes with rebellion war things, is that, like, if I can't believe internally your world that this is possible, I'm not going to like the ending. And that's just how I felt here. Next up is Earls Trip. I have, like, on this list are, like, 3 books from my in-person book club. One of them is my fault. 2 of them are my best friend's fault. And I keep telling her, yeah, I'm making this video, and a lot of the books you made me read are on it. This is Earls Trip. This is just boring. Don't pick it up. It's just boring. It says it's Ted Lasso meets something. There is no Ted Lasso. Ignore that. It obviously is trying to, but it's not. It's really not actually the worst thing. If you have the audiobook, you can like kind of just blitz through it. It's not like a big deal. But it's just kind of boring. So I was disappointed because I wanted a Ted Lasso Regency romance. It was like Ted Lasso meets Bridgerton. That was the comp. And I love Bridgerton, and I love Ted Lasso. And of course I knew this book couldn't be both of them, but it's neither. So, next up is, this is the one I put forth for us to read. And I don't dislike it, but I was disappointed in it for a couple reasons. So this is Long Live Evil. 1, disappointed that it's not the genre I thought it was. I thought it was fantasy romance, or romantasy. It is not. It is campy, adventure, fantasy, soap opera, which is good, but I like watching those. Like, if you want to read Buffy, this could be good for you. I like to watch Buffy. I like to watch Charmed. I don't like to read Charmed, you know? Like, that's like where I'm at. I think for me, soap opera drama works better in a visual media. The second thing is that I think the dialogue just truly doesn't work sometimes. And I just don't think it does. Like, the more I think, because I was trying to put my finger on why the dialogue just always felt so off to me, when I'm not someone who usually has like a cringy dialogue problem. I was just talking today about how certain modern words being added to the Stormlight Archive didn't bother me. Like, normally I'm someone who's just like, whoof, doesn't matter. But here it's because this character, the whole premise of this story, is a character who's terminal for cancer, gets to be transported into her favorite book of all time. And while she's there, she's put into the body of someone who is the villain of the story. Hence, Long Live Evil. And so she decides to embody what she thinks evil is. And it's just like, even a 10-year-old would not portray evil this way. Like, I don't know, the dialogue was just so weird. Because she wasn't talking like she did in the real world. She wasn't talking like any of the villainous characters in this world. It just was like, eh. And it was one thing when it was just her, but then there's another character you meet who also was sort of doing it. Like, there was this weird dance scene. So that was like, kept jolting me out of the story, which I didn't enjoy. I don't like when I'm jolted. And then, like, something I didn't love was just like, in order to have certain fun, silly reveals, we had to have this whole premise that she doesn't remember the first book in her favorite series, and I just thought it was silly. Like, I think you could still have, like, really cool reveals and still have mass chaos without that. That's, like, not, like, the biggest deal. It's just, like, I was having an issue bonding with the main character of the story, and this just didn't help. It just didn't help. So that was my issue. Like, I love campy things. I love dramatic things. I love romantasy. This book just didn't do anything for me. That said, I loved talking about it with my friends. That was a ton of fun. I probably will read the second one because they're all obsessed and want to know what happens next, and I like doing group activities. So this one's worth my time. It's not actually bad. It was just a disappointment. Next up, we have Rose House by Katie Martine. I have 2 copies of A Memory Called Empire and A Desolation Called Peace because I love that duology. When I heard there was a weird, creepy AI haunted house novella by Katie Martine, which, if you know me, I am a haunted house person. I made a whole haunted house recommendation video. This book was not on it. Yeah, this book didn't know what it wanted to be, for me. I know some people do, like, it's weird project, but is it a noir? Is it an AI mystery? Is it a murder mystery? What is this? I don't know. Neither does the book. The resolution is unclear. Do I care about architecture as much as this book? No, I do not. The atmosphere is good. It had good atmosphere. I just was so bummed. I was so bummed because I love Katie Martine and I love a lot of the buzzwords associated with this book. But it had no lasting impression on me. Like, it had promise, but it especially for a novella, it was stretching itself so wide in all of these different subcategories, and it just never quite wrapped up in a way where I understood what we were doing. So that was me. It's fine. Next one is Womb City. Again, my caveat here is please watch people who have 5-star reviews for this, because the things that don't work for me might work really well for you. So Rachel from the Shades of Orange, Bethany from Beautifully Bookish Bethany, they really like this book. I do not like this book. And what's interesting is I don't know if either of them have read the short stories by this author, so I might have just had completely different expectations going into this, but I have read this author's short stories, and they are dark and twisted and experimental and challenging, so I was expecting all of that in Womb City. And it wasn't any of that. Like, I mean, it's dark, but it's not that dark. I mean, it's like a dystopian dark. Oh no, misogyny. Oh no, we're not letting people have autonomy over their bodies. Like, you know, it's like normal dark dystopia. Whereas, like, I kid you not, the short fiction by this author is, like, uncomfortably dark. Like, we're talking, like, Octavia Butler uncomfortably dark, okay? And I guess for that context, I'm talking about some of her deeper cuts that not everyone gets to in Octavia Butler. But regardless, so it wasn't quite, and it wasn't challenging. Like, this is just, like, an action dystopian horror story. Like, it's, you know, if anything, for me, it was just too plot driven. And that's why I say you should look at other people's reviews, because I am not driven to pick up a book and continue reading just because plot is happening. That's how my brain works when I'm watching something. Like, if this was a movie, I probably would have had a great time. But as it stands, as like a 450-page book or something, it was way too long. Maybe if it was 300 pages, I could have gotten along with it. It was a weird genre blend that, and then also, like, the momentum for the plot picks up because of a character's decision that I just could not get behind. Like, I just could not. And it doesn't even matter that they retroactively explained that maybe it didn't even matter that if this character did this thing or not. It doesn't matter because I had to wait till like 50 pages left in the book to learn that. So for 200 pages, I'm like, we're on this journey because you're dumb. We're on this journey because you're selfish. We're on this journey. Like, I just hated it so much. And learning the reveal didn't change the fact that the character did a dumb, selfish thing. And I it's like, you can make flawed characters that are still punished by the system without the decision that was made, and it just bothered me. So that bothered me. It was really action-packed. I don't know if I really actually loved the genre blending, but like, that wasn't actually my biggest sticking point. It was at least very creative. Yeah, I needed something a little different for me to like it. I was bummed because I was really looking forward to it. Like, I love the short works by this author. They are so interesting. They stick in my head rent-free. Like, one of the short stories is like an album, and you're going through each title of the album, and it's about body revenge and autonomy. It's dark, it's twisted, it's so gross. And like, I was expecting that energy here, and it just didn't happen. And then just what it wasn't my cup of tea either. And the last one is Orbital, which has only gotten more annoying to me because it won the Booker, which I know is petty, but here we are. So I read this for the Ursula K. Le Guin Award in Fiction, and I will not lie, the first 50 pages, or 20 pages, I don't know, the first chunk, I'm like, oh my god, I love this. This writing is so good. It's just like gelling with my head. I love thinking about these things. And then it's 150 pages of nothing else. It's just the same things. And I just have a lot of issues with it. Like, I don't think it's bad, but I just don't think it's that good. So I'm very confused why it, out of all the other books, won the Booker. I guess I didn't read the other Booker books, so I don't know what it was up against. And it's not a science fiction book, in my opinion, because it's just people on a space station philosophizing. And in my head, I don't think this space station it doesn't exist. I mean, is it science fiction because it's in space? That's my least favorite reason for saying something science fiction. If you've been here for a while, you know. Whatever. Because that's just where it was categorized for the Goodreads Choice Awards. But we know that they don't know what they're doing anyway. So, I don't know. So, we're on an international space station. We're going in a day in their lives. And I guess a day in their lives is all of them thinking the most depressing, philosophizing thoughts you can think about death and mortality and our place in the universe. But what really, I think, wasn't done well, if you're going to do this, is it's an international space station. These are people from different cultures, religious backgrounds, different ways of thinking. And also, that comes through differently because everyone has their own different languages and the different emphasis, and that just, you could not tell these characters apart. They were all different and yet all the same. It was boring. I think that lack of care for that, like, if that's the whole point, like, you can do the theme of we're all humans, we all process things similarly, while not making everyone the same. Like, and especially since it's being awarded an award for literary craft, I don't think there's craft here. We're just saying the same philosophical things over and over again, and I'm supposed to look at this typhoon and feel connected to some universe. I don't know. I was annoyed. And I, like I said, only got more annoyed the more acclaim this has gotten, because I think it's not that good. Like, I don't think it's bad, but I think it's not good. I don't think it's... I don't think the author met the challenge. If I was grading this is like a C+, maybe a B-. Like, you cannot write like these characters as if they're exactly the same. That just doesn't, that doesn't work. It doesn't work. So anyways, those are my DNFs, disappointments, and worst of. And like I said, even as you've heard me talk about my personal worst of, it's not like they're bad. They're just extremely disappointing and extremely not to my taste. So, if you think you could like them, have at it. Enjoy it. Art is meant to be critiqued and have arguments over, and sometimes that makes it more fun. Like I said, the Long Live Evil discussion, That was fun. Did I like it? No. Did everyone else like it? Yeah, so I was in the minority, but I had a good time. All right, let me know your most disappointing read of the year down below. It can even be a book I love. I won't hate you. And if you just want to leave an emoji to let me know you're here, oh, I don't know, leave a rose for Rose House. And otherwise, like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.